the nations in Nigeria and across Africa. We have Fionn Ferreira to my very left, who is an inventor, a chemist, and a change maker, and behind the Green Journey Coalition. And in the middle, we have Alexandra Mont, the founder of Endoless. And again, in my briefing, I asked people a little personal fact, just for your own enjoyment. And Bukola here has actually written a cookbook. And Alexandra here used to be a pastry chef. And believe it or not, Fionn has a planet named after him as a prize for winning a science competition at school. So they're much more than just their entrepreneurial ventures. But let's start a little bit with the why do you do what you do? Let's make it a short and sweet round to start with. What is the why of what you do? And we'll then dive a little deeper.
Yeah, sure. So thank you so much for having me. The why for what I do is based on my personal experience as a patient. So I kind of came into the health space on the other side, having been the recipient of lots of healthcare as a child, because I live with a condition called sickle cell disease, and that was my main motivator, seeing those gaps from the patient's perspective.
Wonderful. Alexandra?
For me, my idea was built actually from my pain. I suffer from endometriosis, and I realized that I wasn't alone, and I wanted to help as many women I can to feel better and to be heard and to pay, so that the pain can finally have answers and solutions.
And for me, I feel like a lot of people, when I fight microplastic pollution, right? People would say it's because I want to see the happy whales and the happy fish in the ocean, but I'd be lying if I said that. For me, I invent and I'm a scientist because it's a lot of fun, and I just really enjoy the process of inventing and going to the lab every day.
Thank you so much. Buki, you focus on improving access to blood donations in Nigeria, right? When did you realize that this was your calling? And do you have any advice for anyone in the room how to kind of find that within you or in the outside world? How did you stumble upon this, and what was the initial spark to get started?
Yes, thank you. So I started working with my friend called Nkechi Azenge through an organization called Sickle Cell Aid Foundation. We just kept thinking, there's so many people that live with this condition in Nigeria. What is it that we can do to improve their lives? And so for us, it was more of a case of we've been privileged to be able to receive good health care. And there's so many people who don't have that. And our main thing was, how do we make sure that there's equitable access to healthcare for people living with this condition? So for us, it came from personal experience living with the condition and having had that privilege, knowing that not everybody has that.
Yeah. That is a common theme, if I may say, from my own work with entrepreneurs, to tap into this personal story, into experiencing it yourself. Alexandra, your venture focuses on running an AI-driven application and much more. That's a simplification that helps women with chronic gynecological conditions. What made you go into this field, from pastry chef to AI-driven applications? What sort of sparked your entrepreneurial power?
Funny story, I never wanted to become an entrepreneur. I always wanted to work for large corporations and to have a secure future without holding all this responsibility I have to hold today. Because honestly, it's hard.
And we'll get to that, yeah.
And the thing which actually pushed me to quit my job, because I used to be a project management consultant. That's how I use AI and everything. One day I woke up and I had to decide if I want to go to my work, or I would like to take care of my health. And at the moment I stopped, because I don't think it's normal that in this life, in this world, in 21st century, you have to choose between work, career, and health. So that's when I started.
Okay, I hear another story of something that you've personally experienced and that you turned around into something that would positively affect the people around you, not just yourself.
Yes, totally. I was feeling really broken. I was a mistake of the world, and the more I started speaking with people around me, I realized that I'm not alone, but we don't speak about women's health.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear that you've had some hardships there, but big kudos for turning it around into something really positive, and we'll dive a little deeper. Fionn, your work is focused on eradicating microplastics from the ocean, focused on getting plastics out of the nature in our ecosystems. What made you stumble upon this? What sparked your entrepreneurial journey? Take us to that moment, if you can.
So, I grew up in a pretty remote place in West Cork in Ireland. And there by the seashore, I mean, Ireland has lovely weather sometimes, so in those lovely days I would go kayaking and sailing and exploring the wilderness. But when the weather wasn't so good, I would go home and play with my Lego kit. And for me, it just felt wrong to see a lot of plastic on the seashore, but it took a really long time for me to feel initiative to do something about it until I realized it's actually causing harm, right? Litter looks bad, but I found it difficult to realize that it caused harm until I realized that we're all drinking about 20 grams of plastic a week in the water that we drink. Probably right now, while I'm saying this, you're breathing in a couple of micrograms of plastic, so maybe don't hold your breath until the end of what I'm saying now, because in 2 minutes you'll be dead, but just be conscious of what you're breathing. And that's why I decided, well, nobody seems to be doing anything about this. I'm interested in this. Just like my Lego kit, I wanted to try and invent and see what I could do. So I kind of stumbled into invention, and then later when I invented something that worked at 16, I thought, well, maybe it's time to actually turn it into something that makes a difference, and building my own business seemed to be the best path forward.
Yeah, thank you for taking us back to that moment. And all of you do have sort of an incredibly tough challenge to not just manage a business and a venture and doing all the things that any kind of initiative has to do, but you're also tackling really complicated societal and environmental issues that are by their nature already very complex. Maybe starting with you, Buki, take us to a challenge that people might underestimate on this journey of being a purpose-driven entrepreneur, and how you may have overcome it. What are things that really bother you, that you keep hitting your head against, that are tough?
So I don't think we have enough time for me to go into every single thing. But if I was
the list is long.
The list is so long, and I started my journey running an NGO, and it was from running an NGO that I decided to pivot and go into social entrepreneurship and then start the entrepreneurship journey. And it was really different for me because I had to then think about how to run a business, right? From coming up with the idea of what the business was, which for us was medical logistics and blood donation and moving blood between hospitals and labs, and then pitching it to people to be able to get money to start, hiring the staff, going to the different businesses that we were going to be working with and telling them why they needed this service. So I went from an NGO, which was essentially supporting people who was living with the condition, to that part. And I must say that it doesn't really, I thought that because I had run an NGO for a really long time, I was really prepared for entrepreneurship, but it's a totally different journey, having to think about efficiency, operations, profitability, and it almost feels like you're not prepared for that journey. I would say that for a lot of people that are thinking about it, I feel like no matter how many textbooks you read or how many YouTube videos, until you actually start and you get into it and get your feet wet, you don't really know what you're going to be up against. And so for me, the biggest lesson and the biggest learning has been doing, learning, making mistakes, and reiterating every single time.
Yeah, well, just doing it, that's the right spirit. And I hope you have a supportive community around you that holds you in the harder moments. Fionn, same question over to you. What is something that you're like, I wish this wasn't so hard, I keep bumping into this, it makes my life more difficult than it should be out there fighting a good cause?
Well, I think this is kind of a twofold question, right? For me, first of all, I'm young, so I'm 24 years old now. I started this entrepreneurship journey a little bit earlier than a lot of other people. So trying to convince scientists who have PhDs and lots of published papers that your scientific invention that you made while you were 16 in a garden shed in Ireland where there was no internet connection is actually something that people can use was really difficult. But actually, I think a bigger challenge, and one that I face almost every day, is the one of realizing that I'm a scientist, and the thing that I enjoy the most is actually being in the lab and inventing and playing with science and engineering and screwing things together, and not necessarily trying to find investors and different business-related things. So the most difficult thing for me is actually realizing that I'm not good at everything in a business, and that actually you kind of have to give your baby over to a group of people and realize that you find what you're best in yourself, and you don't spread yourself too thin, but instead focus on actually having a really good time and enjoying yourself.
Delegation is key, I hear that, as part of the message as well. Alexandra, again, over to you. What is something that you're like, why is this so hard?
Actually, like what you're speaking about not draining yourself thin, etc. I didn't have this problem because I used to be a consultant. So my job was to find good people for good places, to do as little job as possible. So it helps me a lot right now in my founding life. But actually, as a purpose-driven startup which focuses on women who are underheard, like who are ignored through the history of time, the hardest part is to not stop believing in yourself, because there will be a lot of people who will be telling it's useless what you are doing. It will serve to no one. There is already something which exists which solves the problem. But like you need to remember that you're not a $10 bill. You're not supposed to be pleasurable for everyone. And you just need to believe in yourself, and you need to find the people who will believe in you and believe in your mission, and like surround yourself with people who will support you, because it's really long. Sometimes it's lonely actually.
Yeah, that's a good point, Alexandra. Thank you.